Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments. I'm really excited today to have a very accomplished guest, Dr. Avril Thomson from Scotland, and has joined us today from the National Manufacturing Institute. We can start off today with a little bit about the Institute, maybe.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about the Institute and what it's looking to accomplish?
Okay, thanks, Deepak. So the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, we officially opened in Midsummer's Day this year, 2023. It has been going for a number of years before that. There are a number of specialist centres in the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, and its mission, its vision is to put Scotland and the UK at the forefront of advanced manufacturing. The specialist centre that I work for is the Manufacturing Skills Academy. The Skills Academy is really about, obviously, if we want the UK and Scotland to be at the forefront of advanced manufacturing, we need the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. We are working with employers, educational institutions, training providers to identify skills gaps, to also look at forecast skills gaps. And we're also looking at foresighting skills of the future. And we're then looking to put in place across the skills life cycle the right and appropriate training.
That's brilliant. I think it's so important, the work that you're doing, but I want to, and we'll come back to it in terms of the Institute as well, but I'm really interested in your journey. And I've seen your background, I've looked at what you've done in your past. I'm so excited by the fact that you've done all of this in such an inspirational way that I think that for our audience, it will be an amazing story to dive deeper into. So I think the first question really is, where did this start for you? Where does this inspiration to come into engineering or this sort of field, which is predominantly male dominated? Let's be honest about that. And I would love to know where that journey started from.
So it's hard to pinpoint exactly. I would say that obviously at school, I was interested in numbers, science, logic, process, things that kind of to me made sense. I think I was very lucky that I had a lot of support from within and role models within my own family. So my own father started out as an electrician and he studied at night school and became an electrical engineer. My grandfathers worked in the shipyards in Glasgow, which were booming, obviously, a few decades ago in Glasgow. At school, those were my interests. I think I was really well supported by my family. My dad helped me a lot with, if I was stuck with maths or physics, then he would sit down with me and give me one-to-one help with that. He was always bringing things home from work and let us play about with them. So we used to give each other electric shocks and things like this with the equipment my dad brought home. So engineering or physics seemed like a natural choice for me. And I was lucky enough to be able to access a university education. I come from pretty normal background, and education, when I went to university, and education in Scotland is still free. There are no fees in Scotland. But in those days, you also got a grant, you got travel expenses. So it was very accessible. And also I was lucky to live in a city like Glasgow, which had a leading engineering university. So I think I was attracted to engineering because of that opportunity to create something. So to design, to build, to see something come to reality seemed really attractive to me. So I think that's where that inspiration came from.
I think that's the important part, because I guess for me, having been in education for a long time and skills development, my daughter, for example, is 11 years old. And some of the things that you described about wanting to make something or the logic behind it or trying to, I can see some of those traits. But I think the question really is, and for the wider, on the national picture, is that do you feel that
you came into engineering because of the lineage that you had from your parents? Or was it something that had your parents, although they would have been supportive, had they not come from the same engineering space, is that something that you still feel that you would have gone into? Or was there any other triggers that sort of went, that's the space you need to be in because that feels right and you wanted to be there? Is there any sort of insight around that? So all the audience that are younger and they're at a crossroads, what's going to influence them that's going to really draw them into this space for us?
I think it's difficult to say exactly because obviously that's a complex pathway. I would say that if my father hadn't been an engineer, would I have been an engineer? Difficult to say. I would say, I know that my mum admitted to me later in life that she didn't feel that comfortable with me going into engineering, but she never said anything about it at the time. She had her reservations about me having a career in engineering, but she just kept them to herself. And I would say that for me, the main thing was that it never felt like something I couldn't do. It never felt like it was something that wasn't normal or different, or it just felt that was something I could do. As I say, I was lucky enough to be able to access a university education, and there's a university in Glasgow, Strathclyde, which engineering is a strength at that university. So it just felt like something natural to me, and this opportunity to design, create, build, see things, felt, and work in a team.
Absolutely.
And be part of a team seemed like a good fit for the skills I had at the time in numbers, logic, process.
And do you think that, sorry, this is an open question, but do you think that if your mum had said that to you at that younger age, would it have stopped you?
It probably would have made me want to do it more.
Oh, there you go. So what really drove you was the drive. It was the desire to, the things that made you feel fulfilled and happy, and was seeing something being made and built. And to be honest, I agree with you. I think that even myself, I don't think that anybody would have told me otherwise, regardless of the background. And I think that's an important message that I think that our listeners will definitely want to resonate with, is that you are going to get people. You were very lucky that you had someone that was supporting you, a mum that didn't want to divert that. There are kids out there whose parents will turn around and say, that's not right for you. And whether it's whatever it might be, whether electrification or whether it's someone going into music or whatever it might be, there's a lot of that out there. And I think, what would you like to say to them in terms of that, keeping that drive and that passion for what you really believe in?
There's a saying that I've seen written, and it's, be who you were created to be and you will set the world on fire.
That's a nice.
Whatever that passion is, I think you should follow it.
Excellent. I think that's such an important saying, and I'm glad you shared it. And I think that myself too, I want to make sure that the people that are listening to this, or parents that are listening to this, or teachers or anyone, is to keep that passion alive and to support the nature of somebody. So I think that's a great message to put out there. Now, moving on a little bit from there, moving a little bit, a few stages further in your development as to where you are now. I know you told me about a story, and this story is very important because, like it or not, manufacturing, electrification, it's a very male-dominated space. Mm-hmm. You told me about a story about being on a construction site and working in construction. Tell me what that was like, and you being the only female, you saying, on the site. What did that feel like?
So that was in the early 90s, very early in my career. So I worked on a motorway, the M74. They were building an extension from Maryville to Fullerton Road. And I was placed on this site in the structures team, and it was just so much fun. It was probably one of the best jobs I've had. I really enjoyed it. I would have to say that it was only when we had that conversation the other day that I thought and realised actually I was the only female on that construction site, because there was no differences, there was no, or certainly I didn't perceive any differences. I felt accepted. We had fun. We worked really hard. There was obviously deadlines in terms of this construction and getting the motorway built. But I think it probably was really good for me, because on that site there was a really diverse group of people. it was great for my confidence in terms of being able to communicate and communicating with different types of people. And yeah, I just have good memories about that. And my kids always laugh because every time we drive down that part of the motorway.
Yes.
we say,
Excellent.
I built this motorway. They
That's an
laugh
amazing thing to say.
They're like, you didn't do it on your own, Mum.
They would say that. They don't realize the grand breadth of what you did. I think that's such again, another inspirational thing for even your kids to look, our mother did that. And I think that's really important for them, whether they want to bring that out to the front, but I'm sure they feel it. And I would if I had some sort of inspiration like that. But I think that you being the only female in the 90s, I guess it comes down to the organization you're working for, the organization allowing that to happen, because many don't and don't really make an effort to make that happen more and more now than they did before. And it is on their agenda. And I guess your colleagues and people and the way they think about things is a huge part of that, because it's about, like you said, about you never felt you were the only female there. You were just part of the team.
Yeah.
And that's how I think it should be. It should never be about you're a female, therefore you're placed here, or you're male, you should do this, or your ethnic backgrounds are different, so it should be feeling part of a team. And you felt that. I guess the next thing is that what sort of things do you think that employers should be doing now to encourage a scenario or an environment like you were in to allow that to happen organically and naturally, rather than be too regimented and we have to hit these statistics, but actually trying to draw a crowd in by attracting that space? What sort of messages would you want to get to the employers in terms of how they set themselves up?
So I think there's a piece of work that maybe employers need to do before that, which is really about, I think diversity is critical to innovation, actually. But I think, as we know, equality and diversity, there's key targets that all employers are looking. But before I think we can really achieve that naturally, I think all underrepresented groups, there's a place for creating role models, mentors, support, and putting those in place, I think, in earlier years before employment. So that actually will naturally, so it's about creating a diverse talent pipeline from early years that will be sustainable and naturally follow through, rather than getting to the point of employment and then trying to put the pieces together.
I agree. I think you said it very clearly that innovation is linked to people. It's not a product. It's not a thing you have. It's a thing you do. And therefore, we know about innovation being a product of the ingredients you put into that space, and having that diverse nature of people around it in all forms of life can really change the way or the outcome of that innovation. And as a country, innovation is at the core of what we do. Research, innovation is a big part of it. And as being an academic, being in that space, doing the research and trying to be at the forefront of that, skills are a huge part of that. But when we transition skills in research and innovation into a broader skill set of making and building or manufacturing in this space, which we know is a multiple of the innovation that is the amount of people in innovation, you're talking about quite a big scale of people that are required to support UK manufacturing and building and all this sort of. What do you see that's happening at the moment in that space? Because there's a huge transition that's happening between the way we used to manufacture and how we're manufacturing now, and the fields in which we're manufacturing, especially around electrification. What are you seeing that's changing?
So in terms of skills that are at the forefront of employers and what we feel they're coming to us at NMIS for, I think across all sectors of engineering, it covers things like artificial intelligence, data, digitization, and then also things like automation. We are seeing within electrification, we're seeing high demand for everything really to do with semiconductors and semiconductors manufacturing. I think those are some of the sort of technical skills that employers are that are high in demand at the moment, and how they're looking to upskill and areas they're looking to fill talent gaps in. But there is also a huge demand for some of those sort of meta or softer skills as well. So things like teamwork and communication, innovation, those other skills that to be a successful contemporary engineer that you need around that technical excellence piece.
I love that word, contemporary engineer, and that is exactly what it's an evolution of what you think or what we think an engineer should be and what is needed now, because effective communication, those people skills, being part of a team, because innovation happens as part of a team, not really on your own. And I think that's such an important thing that you've said there, because I think that's the part where a lot of our audience will plug, is that engineering is this dark, dingy factory in which you sit and make things. But it isn't, is it? It's an exciting, vibrant, creative space in which people can really explore. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And what I think is happening is that there's new technologies emerging, new innovations emerging all the time, which are driving the skills. And so it's not something that's definitely not. Yeah. Advanced manufacturing, advanced engineering is very much not dark, dirty, dingy.
No. It's digital and computer science based. Yeah. It's about automation, digital twins. It's about virtual reality. It's about that sort of exciting space. Those transferable skills. We get kids today playing in VR headsets, and knowing that is a transferable skill in creating digital twins. And even construction sites, I've seen colleagues in Birmingham rebuilding a construction site in a virtual environment, and you're simply in a green room where you're just walking around and looking at it from a drone's perspective. And that's exciting stuff. And I think that what you said about the demand is absolutely key. There is a huge demand here, which in my eyes means that anybody wanting to be part of this environment or wanting to have a career in this space has got huge prospects. It's not something you come into and not go away earning good money, having a good lifestyle, being excited by what you do. And that demand is coming from employers. As you said, they're constantly saying, we need more people in these skills. We are growing and this is what we need to do. But there is still that gap that sits there. So we know that there's a demand. We are confident there are people in the country that have transferable skills and want to be part of this. But then there's this gap that sits in between. Why do you think that gap is there? Why do we have a gap that constantly grows in this sort of growing market?
I think there's probably a number of reasons for it. I think one of them could potentially be to do with the cost of living, which I think is having an impact on education and skills. I think it also is related to potentially what young people see as attractive and what they're influenced by as well. I think that's why it's so important that within engineering and electrification and manufacturing, that the creation of a sustainable talent pipeline from 5 through to 75 and being able to close the loop back the way, pick up on that experience of, there's a lot of talk about skills gaps and the percentage of experienced engineers who are due to retire or people with key experiences. I think it's really critical that we capture that knowledge, and those who wish to, that gap can be closed because they can become mentors or support young people or people mid-career. So it's about that sustainability and closing the loop.
Excellent. Building on that, one of the things that we've been working on is trying to make it easier to communicate effectively, because we see constantly employers who are trying to recruit talent constantly putting on their job descriptions 5 years of experience. Not too clear on in what they should be having 5 years of experience. And to be honest, very confusing to anybody looking to apply for that. Now, as we know with all growing markets, one of the things that are very important is about language and communication. And what do we mean when we say certain things? As you've been part of our development of the body of knowledge, which for the PEMD sector we're currently producing and we're launching in a couple of months. What do you think the importance of that is? What that sort of dictionary of information for people that are not part of this world and are simply working in other areas, how important is that sort of language or common language that we could establish within that space?
I feel it's absolutely critical. I think the work that's been done is substantially comprehensive. And what I think it brings is clarity and helps manage expectations as well. So by breaking things down into areas of knowledge and clearly describing what that means, and also breaking down what sort of skills are expected across different levels of education. And again, I think this sort of vision to signpost training providers against each of those, it makes things clear. It manages expectations in terms of what people, so there's not any opportunity for someone to think that what they were going to learn about was different, or to not understand perhaps what the appropriate level for them is, or to be signposted. So to me, I think it's critical, and the comprehensive work that's been done in this area, I'm really very excited to see what that leads to.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the work that you've been part of, and the work that we're doing in the body of knowledge work, is a critical part of, I think, putting that language out there. And I think that also that whole, we're doing a podcast now, and it's about trying to reach out to the audience and say that these careers exist here. I think that one of the things that it would be nice to touch on is, what does it do for employers as well? This sort of comment. So we've talked about that language around trying to bring people in, but employers are very interested in making sure that they're not spending thousands and thousands of pounds on recruitment and they're not getting anybody. With them using a common language, do you think that they'll be able to make a better impact or make their recruitment process more efficient?
Obviously, that's your vision.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I think also what it allows to do is it's almost like describing, specifying, classifying clearly. But I also think that what it could do is perhaps where someone might be looking for employment in this area, if there's a common language, and that common language in the body of knowledge and the areas of knowledge are specified and described in the same way, then someone looking for opportunities in that area, if they are short on skills, it'll be clear, very clear to them which skills they are short of, and also the signposting piece around where they can go and what providers can fill those gaps.
Yeah, I think that
puts them in a great position to then go forward to employers, and or for employers to say, actually, we maybe already have some people in the organisation, and perhaps they have a skills gap at a different level within the organisation, but they might have some kind of more junior people, or actually maybe people that've been there and are more mature in their career, but they could be upskilled, reskilled, and it's clear what areas they would be looking for that upskilling and reskilling in.
Exactly. I think that's a great topic to actually build on, actually, around upskilling. We've got a huge workforce out there that has transferable skills. And I think that putting the language out there will help for them to navigate that space. And what else do they need to be able to be part of the electrification space? But obviously, we all have a duty to support that upskilling piece. But the one thing that we know from the experience that we've done is that the traditional learning methods, which is your 1-year courses or your degrees and your masters, are very important in certain aspects. But for somebody who's already done that and been through education and needs certain snippets of education, what's being done around alternative forms of education? For example, in the Manufacturing Skills Institute in Scotland, what are you looking at in terms of alternative provisions to the longer length courses?
So I believe that for that type, or actually education generally, should become much more flexible, accessible, inclusive. So education, whether it's upskilling and or more traditional modes of education that we're more used to, so the sort of longer courses, I think they need to be adapted and developed to become flexible, modular, accessible, and to work with people's lifestyles, whether that means that they're working or returning to work or around other parts of their lives. at the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, we have focused on producing shorter pieces of upskilling or reskilling, or even just awareness. The Manufacturing Skills Academy is a fairly new specialist centre within MIS. So we've developed a comprehensive portfolio of training at the moment. It varies. It's broad in that it varies from 1 hour awareness to week-long in-person courses. We've just opened our new building and it's just right next to Glasgow Airport, which really gives us a fantastic opportunity. We have learning spaces which will allow people to learn maybe online at their own pace and their own time, and then maybe come in and add value to that learning through actually doing some hands-on practical work, or come and learn in a more sort of traditional learning space, but then observe and or participate. So it becomes more blended, more flexible. I think what, to me, education and upskilling, reskilling is about creating a personalised pathway, because it's almost like a unique pathway for every individual, depending on where they've come from, where they're going. There should be opportunities for people to enter and exit at whatever point, or for how long, what fits with their life, what works with their life, or where they are in their career and what skills they need. They should be able to step in and step out again.
I think that's a great thing that you said there around that flexible pathway. I think that's a really important message out there, that universities and colleges, or the traditional places where you learn, tend to be shoehorned into the space there. They are long-term courses and there are long-term degrees and masters. But universities are evolving. Coventry University, we've got the Skills Academy, everything that we're doing right now, we are also changing the way that we can make pathways more accessible. But you're right, people want to learn what they need to learn, because ultimately, why are they learning? They're learning because it's going to add value to their careers, their jobs, and therefore their aspirations. And I think that flexible learning method is something that many of the universities and colleges and traditional training providers have started to take on. And some of them will hate what we're saying. But the fact is, we're not saying replace degrees or masters. What we're saying is that for someone who can take the time to do a degree, then that's the right path for them. But for those out there that cannot do that, have work commitments, have other commitments, there needs to be options. There needs to be options they can take on and still have the learning they need to be able to be part of our community. And I guess if you are going to give a message to those universities, this is very interesting, you want to give a message to those colleges and schools, what would you want to say to them in terms of change the way you learn? You'd want to grab them and say, this is working for certain people, but what about all the people here that we're forgetting about? What would you want to say to them?
I think what I would say first off is good job. There's excellent education programmes out there, and actually things are changing, as you say. So there's things like degree apprenticeships, graduate apprenticeships in Scotland, which allow people to learn while they're working, while they're doing their apprenticeship. So they are learning practical skills, they're learning theory. But I think there are opportunities for more flexibility as well. So I feel that the future of education is very much going to be about, perhaps in some instances, compressing certain things. And in other cases, maybe, so why does something have to be a certain length? It could be shorter. It could be for some people, and to create the talent pipeline and get them in, it might actually be better for them to do less over a longer period of time. That might be how they come into that talent pipeline. I think the opportunity to create personalised learning as well. So obviously engineering is accredited by professional bodies, and that is absolutely critical that people have that opportunity to become chartered engineers at some point in their career, should they wish. So it's important that status is protected, but I do feel that there is, or should be, opportunities for people to almost pick and choose, mix and match different levels, different disciplines, add in these other skills that are maybe some advanced technical skills, but then also some of these other skills that we talked about as well.
Almost like the building blocks, the Lego of education. You choose your pile and then build what you want out of it. And I think that's a great concept that we want to try and get out there. And the fact is that universities are leaders in research, and what they do will tend to support the colleges and the schools in terms of what they do and how they prep. And I think that's such an important message. It's about, I love the idea of the personalized pathways, and it is about entry and exit points that, as you said. And the more we build on that, I think that we will see more and more people coming into this space and really having a tangible impact on that gap that we talked about earlier that seems to grow. What we want to do is send it into remission, and that gap becomes not a gap, but something that is more like a pipeline of talent that is made up of upskilling, new entrants, and opportunity for many other fields that want to come into this electrification space. But just to close up, because I think we're closing up on time, but what sort of future do you see for this manufacturing electrification space? And say 10 years from now, what would you like to see? What would your ideal scenario be from a skills perspective in terms of what we can do in the UK?
I think it really comes back to this creating a through life learning opportunity. So it's never too early, it's never too late, that you can hop on, hop off, that you can come back at any point and pick up skills that if you want to study for years and years, great. If you want to study in small pieces, that opportunity is open to you. And I think that comes back to something we were talking about earlier is why does that gap exist and why is it getting wider? So that will close, in my opinion, it will close the gap because it makes it accessible, inclusive, provides opportunities.
Exactly. I think that's a great thought to finish on. And Avril, it's been a pleasure having you here. And more importantly, what an inspiring story. And I hope that our listeners can be inspired by it. And I guess the more we continue to work together and support this space, the more we're going to be able to have an impact that we really want, which is, like you said, no gap at all, a flourishing research space and a flourishing manufacturing space. And with the idea now that everything is focused, all these things that we're doing is contributing to a greener, cleaner future, the net zero, all the stuff that is being driven through trying to support the climate change and everything. I think it's a great time to really build that pipeline, not just from younger ones, but very early stage. And I think that the work that you're doing is very inspiring. And I thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to continue to work with you and support this space as much as we can.
Thanks, Deepak. It's been great to have this conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills Podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity. If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.